Hi, I'm Chris Columbus, and I'm here with the co-director of The Porcelain War, Brendan Bellomo. Hello, sir.
Good.
And I'm also here with the producer, Paula DuPré Pesmen. Hi, Paula.
Chris?
Um, I just want to start by saying Porcelain War is a pretty extraordinary film. Certainly one of the top highlights for me this year in terms of films that I've seen. I've seen it twice. It's incredibly emotional and beautifully, beautifully done. And I just hats off to you guys for making such an incredible film. Um, so I wanted to start with Paula. I kind of really want to hear how you produced the film in a war zone, particularly. I mean, can you tell me what the biggest challenges you faced and how you sort of overcame them?
Yeah, and thank you for being here to do this with us, Chris. The film, we were in two different countries with different languages, and we had to be really inventive in how we were going to approach this. I couldn't go out and fundraise to make the film by sending a deck around and talking to people. I had to be very protective of people's locations and identities while we were filming, just to begin with that. And also, we decided early on that we didn't want to go to Ukraine because we didn't want to impose on the story. We wanted to let it organically happen with the subjects of the film, the Slava and Anya and Andre. And so it had this beautiful, intimate quality to it. And we felt that the best thing we could do was to support them. So Aniela and Brendan and I really worked hard on listening and trying to figure out what is the story that they're trying to tell and follow what they were showing and what they were sending to us. On top of that, there was power outages, blackouts, a lot of challenges, air raids going off in the middle of interviews and conversations, and also just the concern for them, concern for their safety. Would they be okay? And then pretty soon we had the whole Saigon unit, all of Slava's unit in the film as well, carrying our cameras. And how do we be responsible for that and do our best to keep people safe? But they're living in a war zone. Their city is being shelled every day. Kharkiv is being shelled. People are being killed in their bedrooms, in their homes. And this is not a war that's far away. It's literally outside their doorsteps. So as a producer, it's hard. You wouldn't do what you would normally do to protect everyone and have safety around your filming when they're being attacked. And so the best thing we could do was to support them and give them the tools they needed to tell their story and really empower them and allow them to have that creative freedom
Mhm.
to be artists. And they ironically didn't actually become filmmakers, they became artists with cameras. And that was so beautiful and surprising to us. We started getting the footage and we are like, this is not how we would film something like this. And so really leaning into the artistry of who they were and are and what they're trying to say, and show us what's worth fighting for and what's the beauty of their country and the beauty of the people there, and why it's important that we all realize this could be us, could be any of us.
Right.
Democracy is fragile, and so we all need to pay attention. And that's really the lesson that they taught us in the filmmaking process.
I think something that's interesting that we should talk about and touch on is the fact that how this came about, because it's a very unusual production situation for anyone who's ever either made a film or read about making a film. You, as a director and the producer, you weren't on location, but you had to come up with this concept. How did this begin? How did you say, we want to make this film, but we have to send cameras to the Ukraine, and we have to have someone else as a co-director and someone else who's never shot a film before as a cinematographer. Can you talk about the origins a little bit? Because that's fascinating.
Yeah, it actually began very, very organically many years ago. So Aniela Sidorska actually grew up, one of our producers with Paula, she actually grew up under Russian oppression in communist Poland, and she became a political refugee when her parents escaped to the United States. And about 8 years ago, she discovered Anya and Slava's figurines, and she was so moved by them because they really reminded her of her home. And she shared them with me, and I was absolutely blown away, Chris. I mean, I'd never seen anything like that. I
Right.
couldn't believe that something so tiny had such huge stories on it. And the four of us actually began thinking about working on an animation together and
Mhm.
started ideating on that. And then Russia invaded Ukraine. And we called up Slava and said, are you guys all right? when are you leaving? And he said, no, we're going to stay. We're going to be here. And I'm like, wait, are you kidding me? He said, no, we're going to be here and we're going to keep making art at night. I asked, why? What are you doing during the day? And he told me for the very first time, I mean, I had no idea. I'm in the Ukrainian Special Forces and I'm teaching everyday people, my friends, peaceful people, to fight. And through these two acts of resistance that were happening at the same time, they're picking up arms and they're also continuing to create something. When you think about a war zone, the last thing you think about is people being creative and making something new. We thought this was remarkable. So we wanted to send a camera there, but it's very unreliable to ship something into a war zone. And we were very lucky to discover that there was this network of volunteers, and it was actually a makeup artist from New Jersey that was stockpiling medical supplies in her apartment. She would fill up the whole thing, 3,000 pounds, 60 bags, and she would bring it to the airport and drive it through Poland into Ukraine. She said, I'll carry the camera for you. So that was incredible. We had the ability to get this there. But, as Paula was saying earlier, we had this huge language barrier. We didn't speak the same language. I don't speak Russian or Ukrainian. So we could only communicate like this over Zoom, except we'd have an interpreter there. So when the camera arrived, we had this really, really unique combination of things. Slava is a sculptor, and he's a master visual storyteller. The guy that ended up being our cinematographer, their closest friend, Andrei, he's an oil painter. They'd never used a camera before, but we said they know what to do. He knows where to put his canvas. All we need to do is show him, here's how to operate a camera. So what happened at the very beginning is I asked Slava, do you know someone who could, just press record on a tripod? And he said, I know somebody, take a look at this. And he shared with me this folder of photographs, oil paintings, masterworks. And I said, this is a cinematographer. He just needs to learn how to use the camera. So we created kind of an impromptu film school. I used to teach it at Tisch, NYU, our alma mater. And I said, you know what, if they can translate their instincts, if you know composition, light, you can begin to tell the story. And so the collaboration was really based on this very unique situation. So we started to solve the problem of, okay, normally you're used to working on set. I come from a narrative background. I've never made even a short documentary. So this was like total fish out of water situation. But I realized the director's instincts, what you're doing as a storyteller, it's not about physical presence. It's about perspective. It's about creative intent. It's about conviction and choices. And so what we ended up doing is, at the beginning, we were so frustrated. We were waiting for a translator to say, okay, here's what you're saying. Here's what I'm saying. And we'd start sketching because we were just bored sitting there. And the sketches became storyboards. And they became shot diagrams, and we looked at paintings that we loved and films that we loved, and we realized we're fluent in the same language of visual art. And so we communicated this way in this very tight, very meaningful collaboration, but it was the best of both worlds, Chris, because we weren't there, imposing on them with a crew or boom operator. They're living their life. It's so natural. It's the most pure form of verite because they're filming themselves, and yet we could work together as artists.
But the initial intent of the film, because this happens all the time in documentary.
Yeah.
You come in with one specific idea, this is the documentary I make, and then suddenly the footage dictates where it's going to go, and suddenly things change. So as the two of you started getting the footage back here, and I assume you saw the footage over Zoom, or were you actually being sent the footage?
They were actually we figured out a way that they could actually upload it securely, kind of in an encrypted way so that it would be very safe. And what ended up happening was one surprise after another. You talk about intention. The intention was just this curiosity. What does your life look like as an artist in a war zone? But
Right.
what ended up happening is we realized nothing that you'd expect for them to do, they're doing. They were going out, they're going into nature. They're looking not just to take a break from the war or find solace, they're looking for artistic inspiration.
Right.
And they're going to places that they love. And we're getting this footage back that's so beautiful. It's so striking. And they're spending all this time filming, a butterfly or sunset through leaves. And I realized they're not filming B-roll. They don't have any concept of what a cutaway is. Everything is of equal importance to us. So I'm thinking if their city is being bombed and they're choosing to film the most beautiful shot of an insect, that has meaning to them. They're choosing to go to a river that they love. And on the way there, Slava, he started texting me. He said, oh, this is a great place. We're going to, film something, but I encountered a minefield and I'm going to remove those mines. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't even breathe. It was absolutely terrifying. But what was so incredible about it is you realized it was all about this attitude. When, Russia first invaded, they were destroying museums. They destroyed universities. So many artists were killed. And so Slava and Anya, the reason they were creating is they felt this sense of responsibility to put back into the world something new, to create. It's in that regard, it's a genocidal war, right? They're the main target is their culture, their uniqueness.
Right.
And so they're creating something new in real time. So it wasn't just, okay, there's going to be frontline footage or it's about their lives. There was this entire artistic process. And the fusion of that with Slava being a soldier was, I just never seen anything like it. So we just followed the footage as they lived through this.
So that, and essentially, obviously, Slava didn't speak any English at the time.
No,
How do you guys communicate? I mean, and how do you co-direct? Do you once you see the footage, do you say to him something as simple as, "Well, I need a shot of this. I need more." Because if someone said to me, quite frankly, I'm shooting an insect, but there's a village being blown up over there. Why is the camera not pointing in that direction? Do you have those kind of conversations? Do you say,
all the time. And
yeah,
it was a beautiful balance of saying, here are the cameras, here's the tools, here's how to use it, here's how to focus. And they would film, one day it would be nature or the artistic process, and the next it would be destroyed buildings. And the
right,
next they started bringing the camera to Slava's unit. And so it expanded and it was incredibly intriguing. But to your question about, we need this shot or that shot, absolutely. We'd review dailies together. We'd get on Zoom and with a translator, I would say, hey, this is great, but can you bring the camera around here? Or don't cross over the 180 line. Or, we really need something that's not just a close-up. I want you to go from this close-up and then come over to a reaction shot. We need these types of cutaways. And they were soaking this in and merging it with their artistic intention and their curiosity. And, by the time we got into full-scale production, we sent 15 cameras there. So Slava and Andre were filming with these compact cinema cameras. We ended up with a whole set of GoPros, a whole set of drones. I mean, they had their own drones for missions, but it was a whole unit of camera operators. And we get on
right,
satellite internet and we go through shot lists, even with the guys in the special forces, and they would be filming these aerial establishing shots. And I was speaking with them about it, and they said, if we can capture what we go through when we wake up in the morning, maybe someone else doesn't have to be in our shoes. And so the level of motivation, they're out there filming every single day. So it's such a paradox, Chris. It's the ideal, from an artistic standpoint, it's the ideal way to make a film because when they are filming something, they're feeling this might be the last day of its existence. So they're giving so much love to it, so much artistry, so much attention. And they filmed, just a huge amount of beautiful stuff. It's over 500 hours.
wow. And there's so many. Paula, there's so many incredible details in the film, from the cinematography to the music to the animation. Was there a certain, initially you guys just talked about the fact that you talked about making an animated film. Was animation always a part of this?
Yeah, when we talked about it, I just was, every time you see in a documentary, you cut away to animation, it just doesn't feel like it belongs in the film sometimes, And so it was really important that we didn't leave Ukraine. And when I talked to Brendan about it, he's like, that's fine. We don't have to leave Ukraine. Like we can actually teach them how to shoot plates and we can actually animate this right in their space, which was
Right.
amazing. So that made sense. And so when we did start to work with Blue Studios, they're in Poland, when we did a lot of these sessions with Slava and Anya and Brendan and I and Yella, and we would just ask them questions and have the cameras on them and just learn more about their lives. And
Right.
in that process, they talked about their past life in Crimea, the day of the invasion, and then they also talked about their hope for the future. So those audio recordings were sent to Blue Studios, and with 20 years of photos of 20 years of Anya's work. And then they took that audio and her style, and they were able to start creating storyboards for these 3 sequences of animation. And because they are in Poland and they had taken in a lot of Ukrainian refugees, this was a personal story for them too. And they were on it the whole year with us. We raised the funds to get animation going right away. I kept thinking that might be like a second phase, but there was no way because the time that it was going to take, we just had to start right away and work with them. And they just did such a good job, and it was so personal to them.
And the music's beautiful. Now,
Uh,
how did the music
yeah,
come about?
I just got a little proto visit. Sorry.
Right? Well, the music, Chris, this was kind of an incredible moment in the film. Very early on in the filming, I was asking Slava, is there something that you love? Let's experiment with some music. And he said, I want to play something for you that Andre listens to while he paints. And he played this song that ended up opening the film called Vesna, which means spring. And it was like stepping through a portal into Ukraine. It was so emotional. And I'd never heard anything like it. It was incredibly unique. It was very Ukrainian, but it was really universal. There wasn't anything esoteric. It had this huge range of emotion, the biggest, deepest lamentation and sorrow and the soaring elation. I said, God, this is fantastic. Let's try cutting something of this. So I cut a scene and I was sharing it with Paula and Aniela, and then another scene. And we kept going. And Paula, you can talk about what happened from here.
Well, I was starting to get a panic actually about it because it was so perfect for the film. And I was asking about the band, and I started seeing some videos of them, and they were artists. And the cello was painted very similar to how Anya had painted the drone, and just felt culturally so perfect for the film. And there's nothing like that music. So Danielle and I started trying to track the band down, but they were traveling, and they still are. Every day they go to a different city, and they're traveling to keep awareness for Ukraine, and they weren't getting back to us. And then Brendan would send another scene, and we was like, oh my gosh, this is just so perfect, and we are so screwed if we can't find this band. So we found out they were coming to Los Angeles. So Niel and I got tickets, and we were going to hold up a sign in the front row like, please call us, we need to talk to you.
Right.
And the manager got back to us and said, let's have a Zoom. And so we jumped on a Zoom, and it was at 6 a.m, and she was in tears, and she said that there had been shelling all night around her building. And we explained what we were doing, and that it's artists, and that they are artists, and it just felt so organic to the project. And so she said, we're just going to give you all of the music. We'll give you our stems, our music, recorded, new, unreleased music. And so I explained that, we wanted to license it. And she said, whatever you give us, we're going to send to an organization that's supporting musicians and their families who are fighting in Ukraine. So that felt so right. And we were able to then get their whole library and let Brendan continue to build the film to this score, which is so it's like a character in the film, really.
It is.
It was really unique for me because normally, we'd cut without music, do a spotting session, bring in the score. But it was conceived from the beginning so that the rhythm of the picture edit was in tandem. It's inseparable from the score. So that was really, really unique. And I think it gives it a very specific quality that kind of merges everything together.
Now, can people hear the score if they want? I mean, is there a place we can all listen to it at this point?
Yeah.
There is, yeah. On our website, we have like a whole Spotify playlist of all, because it's from many albums of theirs over the years. So it's all there.
Fantastic. So that seems to tie into the theme of the film, which is the art of resistance. Can you guys talk a little bit about why the art of resistance thematically is so important to you?
100%. I mean, I think it comes down to a very, very simple concept, which is a bit of a misnomer, right? We have these two words, war and peace. But the opposite of war is not peace, it's creation. This is what Slava says. And so when we talk about the art of resistance, there's a couple of different things going on that are just so remarkably human, so remarkably beautiful. One of them is, in the film, Anya and Slava talk about this concept that, they could just cower in the basement in fear, but they're choosing to live, and to create something is kind of the ultimate form of living. And so there's this defiance, there's this Ukrainian attitude of, we're going to continue being us. They're able to stand up for freedom. They're fighting for it, but they're also living. And the second part of it is, when you look at something in the face of history, and there's a genocidal aggression, meaning that they're attempting not just to take the land, but to destroy the culture, to destroy the art, the language, all of these things, to create new works of art. It's replacing in essence, what was lost. Not that you could replace it, but you're making something new. You're
Right.
creating something for future generations. And it serves a couple of forms, right? It's you're making an affirmation, this is who we are. And you're also, their work is so autobiographical. The figurines that are in the film are almost a time machine for the audience to go into the past, their peaceful past in Ukraine, the first days of the war, and their dreams about the future. So it's so multidimensional. And I think in essence, the film itself, because they chose to record their lives, they're taking up cameras. It's in their own eyes. That's an act of resistance as well.
Mm-hmm. Um, you talked a little bit about your cinematographer, which is extraordinary in its own right that it's the first film he shot and he's nominated for an ASC award. You talked a little bit about how his paintings and his photographs sort of proved to you that he was a cinematographer. It takes a little more than that, though, to actually get behind a camera and reach this particular point. Was there anything that you needed to teach him from a technical standpoint?
Yeah, 100%. And when I talk about looking at his paintings, it was a very rare occurrence because what I saw from within them, to be specific about it, is this very powerful sense of composition, an incredible sense of color, an incredible sense of light. And it's rare. If you look at oil paintings of landscapes, you're like, oh, okay, it's a landscape. These I was moved by. So that does not happen for me, even when I go to to a big museum. So that was the basis. The second thing was there was a huge amount of things to learn. Day one, he said, where's the on button on the camera? He doesn't even know how to record. He just
Right.
knows how to turn it on, right? So we're starting from zero. So what we did was there was two layers to it, right? So we know he's a storyteller, but he needs to learn technically what do you do with the camera. So you've got focus, exposure, monitoring, a little peaking on the screen, all of the
Right.
usual stuff. You can teach that. But then what it became about is the language of cinema, close-ups and wide shots,
Hmm.
focal lengths and lens choices. And we would get really, really specific. We would say this many millimeters, the face is going to look good. This height for the lens, not that height. And we'd go through the dailies again and again and again and again. But what was so miraculous, and this you just, and I believe this firmly, you cannot teach somebody to be a cinematographer. From the first roll of film they shot, Chris, there are shots permeating the intro sequence of this movie that are shot on roll one by Andre.
Amazing.
That's how strong he was. I've never seen anything like it. It's not just that this is his first film, it's the first stuff he's ever filmed. I was blown away. I mean, it was totally surprising. So
Right.
that was,
Did
I
he
mean, it was
use
a
that?
gift.
Did he use any lighting at any time, or was it all natural
There's
lighting?
one shot in the movie where it was so dark out because there was all sorts of chaos going on. They had a little work light that was just in some building and they just turned it and bounced it off a wall. It's all natural light. And what they did, it's almost like you're doing Days of Heaven or something. They were so obsessive. We were filming something on this frozen lake and we were talking about it and they're like, yeah, the light wasn't quite right. We're going to go back. And they went back for a week to this location to just try to discover the light. And it was you're seeing that sort of dedication to their art. You feel it in the footage. They're unfazed by the war. It's not that it isn't breaking their hearts. It's not that it isn't affecting them, but as artists, they're creating this boundary of total defiance where they're going to work. They're even going to experiment during that time. So for Paula and I to see that, what we tried to do is have this deep collaboration, have these conversations. But like Paula was saying in these Zooms, we would give them space to fill that with their truth, with their art. So we really try to know when to engage and when to say, you guys tell us what you're feeling.
I think too, we got this footage and we were getting to know them, but we actually really needed to go that next step. Like, what are they thinking? What are they thinking? What's happening? Because we were seeing it, but we needed to hear it. And
Right.
in those sessions, a lot of times it was just to sit and listen. And the first time we did it, I remember saying, "How did you meet?" And then that scene is one of the first scenes in the film. And it was just getting to know them, following them. Like when Andre was talking about taking his daughters to the border, that was the first time he had gone back into their apartment since he parted with his family. And when he went into the apartment, he was very emotional that day. And we were asking him how he was doing. And he said that their shoes, their boots were there and their coats were there, just how they had left the day of the invasion. But now they're so much older, they can't fit in those shoes anymore. It was just a symbol for him of how he has lost so much time with his family.
Right.
And that happened by just sitting with him in that space and letting him slowly process being in that space and then sharing with us how he was feeling and what that day was like when he said goodbye to his family. And he's only seen them 3 times since the war started. We're about to hit the 3rd year of this war.
Amazing. Um, so the film premiered a little over a year ago at Sundance, and Paula, can you talk about the reception you guys have received since then? I mean, sort of the feels like an overwhelmingly positive response to the film.
I think the film in Sundance, the film received the U.S. Grand Jury Prize, which was an incredible honor. And right away, Slav and Anya and Andre asked, "Is this good? Is this a good thing?" Like right?
Yeah.
Just, is this a good thing? We want to help. Is this going to be helpful? The film has traveled. We've done a lot of impact screenings. It's traveled all over the world, played in festivals all over the world. We're going to have a screening at The Hague in 2 weeks. We've screened at Congress and a bipartisan screening in Congress. We are screening at Cinema for Peace, and as much impact as we can. This film has an ability to bring people together in a hopeful way, showing the beauty of people and why people need to pay attention and not turn away and actually lean into things that are important to us, to be able to have the freedom to create, to be able to have the freedom to speak the languages we want to speak, and live the lives that we want to live and create. And I think that the beauty of sharing the film up to this point and having this incredible honor right now of having the film being in the world stage is a wonderful opportunity to remind people that, war is awful and war is senseless and destructive. But amongst that, people also are beautiful, and the good in people around them comes out, and the goodness in these people and people around them shines. And I think that it's important to have hope and to keep reminding ourselves, that these things are worth standing up to, and making sure that we continue to support and be resilient and not feel deflated when things feel hard.
Right.
They can be, but it's also, there's so much beauty in the world and in people that it's so worth fighting for and standing up for.
But what's incredible is this is the only doc that's this year's been nominated for the Oscars, the PGA, the DGA, and the ASC. Now, you talked about this a little bit, but how do you hope that this increased recognition for the film how can that help the people of the people fighting in the Ukraine?
I mean, I think there's two facets of it. I mean, I think one of them is that, when you look at the news cycle and you look at the coverage that's been shown of Ukraine, there's you get anesthetized to that. Keep seeing the same thing. And what ends up happening is, even if you're seeing a really good piece of reporting, oftentimes you'll say, okay, here are the refugees, here are the soldiers. There's this inadvertent dehumanization because you're labeling. And people, you put that in a box and you say, okay, this is this issue and it's a foreign conflict. What we focused on is delabeling, getting to know people through stepping into their shoes. And our hope is that, support is galvanized because you have an opportunity to recognize how much you have in common. You have an opportunity to realize, wait a minute, this may be happening within the borders of Ukraine, but it's affecting all of us, right? It's the largest conflict in Europe since World War II. You have other authoritarian nations that are watching the outcome of this. If China sees Russia win this war, they might be emboldened to invade Taiwan. And you start looking at this as a global community, and you realize this notion of isolationism might actually be something, we could be protecting all democracies if we help each other. I mean, this was a completely unprompted attack on a sovereign democratic country. So our hope is that the greater the awareness, the more everybody can benefit, because democracy and freedom are at such great risk all around the world.
I noticed that so when I saw you guys at Sundance after the first screening, and Slava was there, and they brought their dog, they brought the family dog, and I noticed today you sent me a photograph from Pixar, and is the dog still here with Slava and family?
Yeah, they're still here. We've been traveling with the film and doing screenings nonstop and really just continuing to do outreach and awareness. And that is a way that Slava feels that he can help, and that his unit and the soldiers in Ukraine feel is helpful. And he gives them reports every day about how screenings went and how the audiences, or what things are people are talking about. And it's really helpful for them to feel connected. And I think, he talks about how when he picked up his camera, someone else picked up a rifle in his place. And they feel that the camera can be a really powerful weapon as well. And him being here and being able to travel and talk with audiences and talk with people about the film is it's so important. It's so powerful, because again, we need to not think of this as something far away.
Right.
It's far away. It's close. And yes, Frodo's here with Slava and Anya, and He goes everywhere with them. He's part of the team, and he represents all the dogs and animals in Ukraine that, have been separated from their families too.
Well, it's such a connect. People do connect to their animals in a huge way. I understand that. It just adds another emotional layer. So, Brendan, I also have to give a shout out to our old alma mater, NYU. The fact that I was there a little before you, a few years before you.
Just a little, Chris.
But when you were there and you were studying, I'm pretty well aware of the work you were doing when you were a student, which was very much in the special effects, fantasy genre narrative. And now you're here with this Oscar-nominated documentary. Where is your head right now? Is this something that you're going to continue to do? Are you going to continue to want to do documentaries? Are you going to sort of bounce back and forth between narrative and documentary filmmaking?
It's an important question, and I think it has a very singular answer. I used to think that you go out, write a story, or you find a story. I really think stories find you. I mean, I was discovered by this. And if there's something that, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, we're looking to reveal the human experience and find truth, right? And connect. And so those things to me are the same. And so my interest in either is 100%, and I think documentaries is so incredible, especially with this film, because working with artists and a story about artists, for me, it was very, very close to home. And so it enabled a really, really rich collaboration. And because we had animation within it, I was playing to certain things that had been passions of mine for many years. So it was, I think a fortuitous fit, and yeah, drew upon a lot of stuff.
So when you say you were discovered, you mean your artistic purpose was discovered. You've discovered
No,
your own artistic purpose in terms of the future of
yeah,
film.
I mean, I think what I'm getting at is like I was never expecting to make a documentary. I've never even made a short documentary before. I wasn't expecting to make this film, but when we started working on it, the idea for an
Right.
animation project together, and then I found out what was happening with their lives, that is one of those moments in life where you can say, here's a way that I can help. Here's a way that I can, we're in one way or another, again, fiction or nonfiction, we're all trying to use our craft and our passion to make the world a better place. If you're entertaining people, if you're revealing a story, if you're trying to help somebody tell their story, it's all part of the same spectrum of connectedness. And I think that was like, okay, wow, I felt the story, quote unquote, kind of found us. And you just, you say, hey, I'm going to call every single person that I know and say, we have to do this together. That's what it was.
In conclusion, I guess, what is the two of you, Paula and Brendan, what is your overall hopes for the film in the future? Aside once the Academy Awards have passed, whatever happens there, what are your
Yeah.
hopes for the film?
For me, I hope that people will continue to pay attention, to really see the human side of what war does to people. And just in life, we need to pay attention. We need to be kinder. We need to pay attention to what's happening in the world, to our environment. Ukraine's the most landmine territory in the world now. Those landmines won't be gone in any of our lifetimes. And so we need to be more aware. We've got to pay attention. We can't look away. And I hope that this film brings people inspiration and connectedness so that they want to pay attention and that they want to not tune out, and realize that this is something that we all need to be a part of, these solutions, and continue to be kind. We need to be kinder. It seems simple, but it's real. The whole world needs that. You can feel it globally that countries are in trouble and divided, and we're actually not that divided. This film has traveled all around the South. It's traveled in the North. It's traveled all over the world, and people embrace this story on every level. And that's because I think that they see this could be us. This could be any of us. These are regular people. And I think more stories like that can be really impactful.
I think it comes down to this concept that you can actually make a difference. The people in this film, they're soldiers in the special forces, but really they're home contractors. They're graphic designers, IT professionals. I was preparing to ship the cameras to bring them to Ukraine with this woman I mentioned earlier, who's this makeup artist in New Jersey. She quit her job, and people are shipping Amazon packages to her. She packs them up in these bags. And in the film, you see Slava opening up these bags and taking out winter clothing, body armor. And then later in the film, people are wearing it on the front line. The idea that you can actually contribute something that will save someone's life, that resistance is possible by everyday people is a beautiful concept. And that despite all of that terror that's happening, that to live is also possible, to make art. That's just, it's a complete testament to the beauty of the human spirit. And I hope people can see that. And I think that is very unexpected for what would be otherwise labeled a war film. This isn't about something that's disgusting and destruction and all of these terrible things. This is about life.
Well, I think hats off to you guys as filmmakers because I think the film is not only is it a beautiful, it's a very important film at this point as we're all struggling with our surrounding world and we're seeing the growing lack of compassion and humanity around us. And your film has reminded people that we have to be compassionate, that we have to think of 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 people and their issues and what they're going through. And we have to look at the people involved in these much bigger situations. And it's really the time is right for this movie. And it's an honor to sort of talk to you guys and discuss all of this. And the best of luck. Congratulations.
Thank you,
Thank you
Chris.
so much for beautiful
Yeah.
conversation. So appreciate your support and great questions.